Wow.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bella.
I'm Ebaad.
Welcome, Ebaad.
Well, thank you for having me.
You are the first one I met at Founders Inc. who are doing something with voice as well.
Likewise.
Amazing. And I think you are also an audio person, like you would prefer collecting information with audio.
Yeah, I prefer that in some cases.
Cool. Let's talk more about that. Can you tell us about your story with voice and which role voice has played in your life?
Oh, voice has been really, really amazing. It's 5x my productivity, maybe 10x it as well. In the past, maybe year or 2 years, I've listened to 5 million words. I use this app called Speechify, and I recently came across this other app called Whisper Flow, which I've dictated 100,000 words in 2 months. I used to use the dictate function on Apple, but it was not that good. But Whisper Flow makes it very easy. So yeah, it's a big part of how I have my workflows from coding. So I just talk to Cursor as well. I also basically talk to an LLM. I just blab on for like 30, 40 seconds about different things and give it as much context. And it just does that. And then I use Speechify to listen to the answer as I'm walking around or doing something. I like to walk around, so you can't read while walking around. So I'll just run the LLM, be walking around the room, and then hear it through my headphones.
So you like talking to apps.
I like TalkToApps. Yeah.
So here comes to your product.
Yes.
What are you building?
That's a nice transition. I'm building this thing called TalkToApps.com. It's kind of like what it is. Basically, you can interact with your favorite apps using natural language. It could be text or it could be voice as well. So both. And basically, what you can do is instead of clicking 100 times, you can just say things that are very abstract, like remove all my meetings on Wednesday, instead of going and clicking and everything. And it will understand that, or make a meeting and assign it to Vela, or invite Vela, or assign it to this person instead of going and finding them with clicks. So yeah, so currently it has Todoist, but I'm going to be integrating today Google Calendar and then Google Sheets. I was testing out yesterday. It looks pretty exciting. Like you can do things just from an extension and talk to the extension, considering WhatsApp as well. Like it could be cross-platform using WhatsApp, so you can just basically speak in a WhatsApp bot, and then it will just do those things. So you don't have to worry about it being on your computer. Yeah, I think the barrier to entry in terms of making a task or having the idea in your head for it to basically go onto the computer or your app, I think it's more of a design problem. And I think the barrier to entry should be very little. So in the future, I would like to have it as a bracelet where you can just tap it and then it does that. But that's a long way from now.
The basic point is you want to change your interaction with machine as natural as the interaction with humans.
Possibly, yes.
Can you share us your favorite user story so far? Yeah.
I have a favorite user story. I think it's this guy Hadza, and he uses Whisper Flow as well. And he built a nuclear reactor by talking to Claude. So that's what he was doing. He was playing with these tools and stuff, and then he would be talking to Claude as it is, because you can do space and FN, and then you can keep talking to Whisper as you're doing things. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. Like you can just keep talking and give it the context of what you're seeing. Maybe you have this, and then you can just talk to it, and then kind of take the output back, and then use it to what you want to do.
Let's dig into the technical side.
Mhm.
Which challenge you have been faced with when building TalkToApps?
That's an interesting question. I think there's two main problems, and I'll go over them chronologically. The first one is, as we talked about, it's the design of basically how you communicate with it. It could be natural language. It's going to be natural language, but the first thing is like, can you type as well? Right? Cancel all my meetings on Wednesday. Because sometimes that's necessary, because if you're outside and things like that, people, what I've heard, people don't want to talk as much. You're more careful talking out loud.
Yeah, exactly.
So typing could also be an interesting solution, but then it's voice first. The second is, how do you basically interact with the app? Like, how does it give you feedback? Like, there's a term in UI, like, it has to give feedback. Normally, Alexa and Siri, they just say things, which I think is very limited sometimes because with voice, you can only hear the things that are right in front of you or someone's saying. But with graphic, you can see the whole thing.
Yeah, like one dimension and multi-dimensions.
Yeah, multi-dimension. Like there's this a quote like a picture is worth 1,000 words. So if you can see things, how things are happening, that's a very interesting one as well. And then you want continuous feedback. Like basically, if you're doing multi-step workflows, like an example would be like, okay, could you get this Twitter link and research this person and put it into my investor doc for Sheets? So you basically need to kind of see that that text converts into something visual, where it's like, okay, taking Twitter, it's an icon, and then it's putting it into an LLM, and the LLM is kind of spinning maybe, and then basically you can also drag and drop things if it screws up, like, and then it changes the text based on how you do. There's this thing called Zapier, where you can kind of tie multiple functions together. So it kind of could be like it's also text, but you can also drag and drop if something messes up or if it selects a wrong function. That, and I think the last part on the design part is like when you mess up. Like maybe if you are trying to add investor in a doc, which is basically like for your friends or something, and there's no investor column or something, how does it give you the feedback in terms of, oh, you gave wrong commands, or it should just basically give you the right commands to run? That kind of comes back to the technical side. It's like you need to have context of their Excel or Google Docs or their Notion page of what the structure is. So I'm working on that on the technical side, like creating like separate functions for everyone's Google Sheets. So it can basically know exactly what the natural language commands are missing and can give a feedback. Like maybe it's like a sentence and then it has like empty spaces. Oh, like you added the investor, but then there's a Twitter. Do you want to also add the Twitter? And I can research that for you or something like that. So it could be interesting. So that's the interaction product side. And I'll be happy to talk more about the technical side of how the infrastructure, the LLM and state management will be.
Yeah, sure. But before that, I want to dig into the interaction, like the design side.
Mhm.
How would you love to handle this problem? Like how to do the trade-off or balance the interaction design between voice interaction and the graphic interaction?
I I'm depends on what problem you're solving. Like if you have a screen in front of you, I think graphics is better because it has more bandwidth of information. And I think you can do a lot of interesting things of like what you're showing at that time highlighted in a specific way. Things like that. But I think in terms of interaction, graphics is very, very good because you can just basically see all your calendar. Like you can't if like voice is telling you that this is your calendar. You have meeting on at 3, you have meeting at 5. It takes like maybe 10, 20 seconds to kind of
Yeah,
see,
a lot.
and you forget as well.
Mhm.
So I think it's good for one-way interaction and then the feedback should be graphical. Does that make sense?
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm more focused. I think interaction right now, if you're talking to Siri or something like that, it's very computationally heavy. And then you're waiting for the answer, it's thinking, and then if you cut it off, it's like you remember with,
Mm,
with Agenta?
yeah.
Like cutting it off and like it's like yeah. So I think talking and giving instruction, voice is hands down the best, but giving feedback, I think graphical things are interesting. But there's trade-offs, of course, depending on where you
Oh,
are.
yeah. And it reminds me, probably it's your design principle for TalkToApp. Like your input is just the voice,
Hmm.
but your output is the graphic, like command.
Yes. And there are benefits to that. There's like you can't talk to it on a phone as well, but could be interesting.
Okay.
But I think I'll figure the design out more as I go across.
Cool. Let's move on to the technical challenge.
Yeah. I think the technical challenge is like currently it's a very, very simple infrastructure, but it has to get really complicated as the complexity of the tasks increase. So currently it's basically, if you guys know, agents are not that crazy. You just basically give a command and they convert them into objects. And those objects are normally JSON objects that you can run functions with. So if your to-do task, you basically say create a task at 3 and it creates this JSON object, which has these parameters. So it could be like content, due date, that's it, right? And then it has this API where you can basically run that API on the back end. But complexity arises. It's easy with create tasks because there's no previous context you're dealing with. But updating is a little bit challenging because to update, you need to find what you're updating first. So if you say update get groceries at 3 to 5, it has to first search the groceries. And then these APIs require you to have like a primary key where there's a task ID, then you have to map the task ID to the update and then run it. And then there's also this challenge of storing states. Like if you basically say that update it and it updates it, and then you're like, you change your mind and you want to undo it, you have to store what it was before.
A lot of function calls.
A lot of function calls and a lot of state management as well. So you have to like be able to go back. Like maybe if you're on the fly, oh, change it to 5. Oh no, change it to 6. Oh, you know what? Leave it at where it was. So you have to have 2 states stored, like the basically the step by step, and then move it to initial state.
It reminds me, if I say that change to 7 or change to 6, probably it can be some design stuff. Like the point behind that is how can you identify what users are exactly saying, what they're missing behind that. Probably you need more time, like until 5 seconds later, you need to do the translation after that.
Could be. It could be like that. Like maybe like after you've said the sentence and you've completed it and then run it. That could be handled on the front end. Like when the sentence is complete, then run it. But it could also be done where it displays it and then you can change it again. So I think both. So it's kind of like a thing of where you pre-process it and process it.
Yeah.
Because like if you say change my groceries at 5 or like do groceries at 5, that's a complete sentence. So it can just basically wait for you to change your mind, maybe 1 or 2 seconds. But then there's like this thing where you want to just do it immediately instead of waiting. So I think storing it in a state makes more sense. But you can do some pre-processing on the front end before you make the function calls. So it's a very interesting problem.
Very interesting. Can I say it's not only a technical issue, but it can also probably handled by some product design.
Yes, it could be handled by product design as well. Initially, yeah, could be interesting to see. But the thing is, it's a very new field. It's a new human-computer interaction field. So a lot of people are going to take time on developing it, and the best design will rise to the top. It will bubble up.
Yeah. Also for the eval, like the evaluation of your product and the voice interface, there's a brand new evaluation way.
Okay. What does evaluation mean?
Like the product evaluation.
Yeah.
There comes to 2 parts. So first is the product eval, that how can you evaluate whether your product solved the user's problem.
Okay.
It's from the user side.
Okay.
And second is if you think from the technical side, how's the quality and latency and whatever.
Yeah.
You do have some different metrics of your
100%.
conversation.
100%.
So how do you evaluate them?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think right now I don't have a very good framework. I basically see what's a good workflow. I could do more user testing, but I recently implemented this thing called Grok, which is with a Q, and their latency is very low. So on the transcript, it can do under 300 milliseconds for a sentence, meaning that it's like 0.3 seconds. So it's kind of real time.
Yeah.
And then creating JSON objects and running the API, it's like 0.8 seconds. So it kind of is real time. So you basically say add groceries at 3, and then it will do it, and then you can see the visual, and then, oh, you know what, change that to 5. So I think the latency with Grok has changed a lot of things, because previously with OpenAI, it took 2 seconds, and then it's kind of not that intuitive. So I think you can just basically see the workflow and be intuitive enough, be saying, oh, this is it's good technology, and then it's a good, also, it seeps into the design as well. Because I think latency is very, very important in this case, because you want to be able to change things on the fly. There's this company called Aqua Voice on YC that's doing a really good job with editing on the fly. I'll show you after. It's amazing, like the way they do voice editing. Basically, you can just speak. You just say, "Hey, can you create 3 items: GPUs, computers, and things?" And then you can you convert it to a list? So I would just basically take a sentence and convert it to a list, and then you would be like, "Oh, can you add GPUs to the top instead of computers? And it would do that. And can you make 200 GPUs instead of like just GPUs? And it would add 200
Yeah.
there. As you understand, like
Mm-hmm.
it's very interesting. We'll take a look after this,
Cool.
but yeah, I think it could be done with coding as well. Like maybe you're just running a function and could you take line 150 to 160 and kind of add two if statements in there, or add one argument, or move this to the function below. So you can just basically edit code and run code with a voice. I don't know where our conversation started, but I think it's kind of the evaluation side. I think you can basically see intuitively if it's a good product or not. I don't know. I don't know if that's taste, or I don't know if that's just. I think everyone can tell that if it's like
Yeah.
if it's a bad product, you can just basically see. It's like a movie. Like you see a bad movie and you're like, it's a bad movie.
Yeah, there's two parts. Okay, yeah, we move very far away. And let's move to the last question.
Mhm.
In the future, what kind of, like, how do you see the future of voice AI and voice based product?
Oh, that's interesting. I think it'll depend on these two technologies that are coming in. I think it's taking two paths. One is the computer vision side, where you can just basically tell your phone to send a WhatsApp message to Vela about this meeting or something, and it can just do that. And then the design in terms of interaction will be very different because you're going to see the AI do it on the screen or something like that. It's like just how you would do it. And the second one is like this one, where you're adding a layer of natural language on top of these functions. I'm more bullish on the second one, the latter one, because I think it's just faster because you're using CPU instead of GPU to make these API calls, and then you're just using natural language to infer what those API calls, and it's very like in terms of the cost. I know your question was like in terms of how the interaction will look like. But I want to talk a little bit about the technology as well. Scanning images and finding where to click, it's very expensive. And then you have to do like one image per second or something like that. But with this, it's just very, very quick. And then you're using human to scan the page and things like that. In terms of the future, I think the future is going to be natural language, because I think technology tries to optimize towards how efficiently you can do things. Like, not always, like QWERTY keyboards are not very effective, but those are other things. But it basically optimizes for the thing that's gonna take the least effort. And I think if you're clicking and then you have to do 10 touch points to do one task, and if you can do it in a sentence, the efficiency will demand that you move towards voice and no more natural. Like, you can do way more with voice in terms of communicating what you want to do than clicking. So, and it carries more information. Like, it just carries more information. Like voice, like natural language. You don't have to specify a lot of things. Like you can get a lot of context from the words around it as well. Like we're recording an interview in a podcast room. This is not a job interview, it's a podcast, so it's probably a different type of interview. So language in its structure is very flexible. So I think that's the future, and it's more intuitive to humans. So I think natural language browser is going to be a big thing. Natural language IDE. There's a company in South Park Commons, I think, that's working on natural language browser. So basically, you type in, open this page and go somewhere or something, and it'll do that. Download this. And then with code, it's like run this, deploy this, things like that. So I think natural language is going to be very huge, especially with LLMs and also the new tools everyone's building.
Here comes to the end. In the future, I would love to say that, currently what we are building is we leverage the voice AI to make the interaction between humans and the machine more natural as the interaction with humans.
Mm-hmm.
In this way, we can have more time spending talking with humans
Yeah. And talking to machines as well.
and talking to machines as well, and let the agents talking to other agents.
Yeah, that would be hilarious. There's two Hinge agents talking to each other. There's like, yeah, agents talking to each other. Yeah. Then there's going to be other problems that are going to come. I think most of them, I think there's two sides, the technical and the design side. And both of them interest me. So we'll see. I think the future looks, I don't know if it's bright, but it looks different than, it's definitely bright, I think. I don't want to be clicking. Yeah.
Yeah, very good vision, very good point. Thank you for dig into the technical side and bring us upon the future of the voice and the interaction with machines.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Bella.
Thank you, Ebaad.
All right. Okay.